You are listening to Bridging the Gap, the podcast where we talk about businesses going global with the help of localization.
Stay tuned to meet the marketing, product, and software experts that make brands international and learn strategies to speak your customers' language.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Bridging the Gap. We are so happy. We are preparing a second season of this wonderful podcast. I wouldn't think when we started that this would continue as swiftly, but we are having great guests. And this season we're going to have a few changes. And one of them is that our head of product at Localazy, Jan Bilek, he's joining us as a regular speaker and co-host. So hello, Jan, how are you doing?
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can bring some useful insight for you into the conversation.
Of course. So how's the year going? From the product perspective, I'm just wondering for any PMs that are listening, in the language industry, I guess it's going to be like a hectic year as last year, especially with AI and all the changes.
Yeah, it's been AI everywhere, and I believe that it will continue in the next year as well. The most important thing from the product perspective is that the expectations of the customer changes. It's not just new tool appears and you need to implement it to stay relevant. But the most important change I see is the customer perspective. The expectations change. It's coming from all that, let's say, hype created by the marketing teams from those AI companies, trying to convince people that they will do everything for them. It's not 100% true, but what it does to the customer base is that they have different and higher expectations of the quality of your product and whatnot could be automated.
Right, and in the end, they are not real expectations, as I see, especially every time like a big change is rolled out in OpenAI or any of these big engines, I see that there's like kind of a disappointment in some of the clients, right? Because at some point they think they're going to be able to do everything and anything with AI, and it's actually not true.
Yeah. The expectations are high, definitely, and just slowly going there, step by step. I believe that this currently is lot is possible to do with AI. It's possible to automate all of the mundane stuff people have been doing for years, basically. But there's still a lot to do and a lot to learn in this area.
But that's actually a funny remark, because normally I see that the conversation is too focused on human translators and what AI can do instead of them. But in the end, when I've used it and I've seen it inside translation management systems, I think the biggest advantage, in my opinion, is that it can automate some processes that you do by hand. And people are just thinking about the big picture of AI in a like dystopic world. And actually, it can be very helpful right now for menial tasks that we hate to do. But people don't have the education for that. There's still a lot to learn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, the biggest advantage and the value in AI is that it will basically create space for more creative work and reduce those mundane tasks no one wants to do. And it's truth as well for translations.
Yeah, this has been said like plenty of times. There was like a quote rolling around that said, I want AI to do my dishes and not my art, or something like that. And it's exactly like that with human translation. Whatever you think must be revised and proofread by a human, like AI should be doing the workflows.
Yeah, I think we have to quote here, because there was this viral post from Joanna Maciejewska. She's a sci-fi and fantasy author, and she really wrote it well. She wants to do and enjoys the creative work, and I think that what it's all about. AI, it should automate the boring stuff and let you do the thing you want to do, which is creative work. Same with translations, same with any other work. So it's a good thing. If someone is worried that AI will replace their job, maybe it's not the right job to do. Sorry for that.
Well, maybe they have to do a more creative job, because that's what, like, when we talk about the future of work, it's always about that. What can you do that a machine cannot just do? And that's what makes you human, basically. I know it sounds very idealistic, but it's actually true. Like it happened in the Industrial Revolution with the factories and things like that. So we're just facing kind of a similar transition. The only thing I'm seeing in the situation is that there's like a kind of a bubble at the moment, and many systems are relying on other systems. That's why I think many companies could have trouble if algorithm changes from the bigger ones. You know, I'm wording it wrong, but I think I think the audience know what I mean.
Yeah, there's still a long path to that ideal future where all those mundane tasks are automated. It's a big deal, especially in big enterprises where they have like a huge percent of workforce doing this, manual clicking or data entry and things like that. Honestly, I think that people hate it. It's a horrible job. Sorry if I don't want to offend anyone, but
No, it is.
yeah,
We've all been there with some tasks, and at some
yeah,
point.
and no
And
one
the
enjoys
best
doing
example
that.
is, sorry.
Yeah, no one enjoys doing that. And I don't see a point why being afraid of replacing these types of jobs. It's it's inevitable. We have to do it.
Yeah, we would actually like to replace them. The best example that comes to mind is Facebook moderators. Like they need even mental health support for the things they see, and if that can be done by a machine, they'd be better off. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many spaces where this applies, but regarding translations, there's still like an ongoing debate, and it never seems to end. But as we discussed, I think the focus is put in the wrong place. It's not about the translations and their quality, although some companies will use bad quality translations to just cut down on cost. In the end, AI is there to help with whatever you don't want to do, which is mechanical, menial, boring. But I would like to hear the input from a person who's working in a translation company, actually like professional translators. And I took the liberty, Jan, to invite a dear colleague of us, and he's here with us today to join us in this debate. Hello, Jiří. We are so happy you're joining us for this first episode of the second season. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you, and I look forward for our discussion here about the new trends in linguist industry. And let's have a look what the future will bring us.
So, for those who don't know Jiří Šebek, he's the CEO of Dialect. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? What's your line of work?
Well, basically, as you mentioned, we are LSP, language service provider. Our core business, and let's say the biggest value, is the core communication and sourcing with our linguists, especially with the native speakers specialized in specific industry. And we started actually at the very beginning before the company has been established. And it was me by myself as a English specialist in terms of when it came to translation from English to Czech. But later on, during the COVID era, we developed and started working as a company, more linguists together. And later on, I realized that my role has become more in terms of management rather than linguist. So I come from linguist industry. However, nowadays I'm more in management and operations field, but still supporting and working closely with all the linguists that we have in our company. And regarding the services, as you mentioned, the time changed a lot. Innovations changed a lot. And nowadays, it's not just about the translation. I think that the translation is something like ancient word. Now we mostly focus on localization, testing, and the post-editing part of the work, or some kind of also engineering when it comes to project management. So basically, the role and the whole service changed a lot within the last few years.
I guess you've experienced the AI craze in person for the last few years. And I was wondering because I saw a recent survey in Slator that it says that 2/3 of translators have used AI in their work during the last year. Is that the case for you? How do you manage that?
Basically, we are giving a choice to all the linguists to use it or not to use it. But every time, whenever we deal with any translation or localization, we always use some software which helps us to provide with the QA, like the quality assurance. And basically, the AI or NMT, it can be old machine translation or artificial intelligence, but it's a tool. That's the core. And if a Slater is talking about, let's say, 60, 70% of the linguists, why not? I hope that one day it will be 100. We need to be specialists. We need to work on ourselves and be always better than a normal common customer, which could later on do it on their own, because we need to be the professionals with that. So I hope I support the tools, and hand in hand with that, I support education for those that are using the tools.
We were just talking about that exactly at the beginning of the episode, right, Honza? Like,
Yeah. I'm just thinking like you mentioned some AI tools. So based on your experience, what is the current adoption from your translation team? Like how do they interact, and what is their feedback actually? What do they value?
It depends on the language actually, and a lot. For example, Hebrew is totally different language from for the AI, and it's quite different when it comes to options, how to use it, and when it is proper to use it. And also sometimes it depends also on when it comes to type of the translation. Sometimes the thing is that AI is more like a creator rather than a translator. And sometimes you don't want to create new ideas. Sometimes you don't want to create new thoughts. You just need to keep the meaning and just move it to target language. So it depends. In the literature, it's quite thin ice because there are, let's say, two parties. One is supporting the AI and machine translations, and another party says, no, you need to live the story. You need to be more or less like the author when you are translating. So, for example, in literature, it's a big discussion in this matter. On the other hand, what I feel and what I see from any tool is that you always need, like, the language. Any language is a living organism, and you need to supervise. You need to supervise the AI or MT and tell them this is much better in this context. And I actually quite a few days ago I had a very interesting discussion about it, like what's the difference between junior salesman and a senior one? Well, the senior one knows how to say it. They say the same thing, but in a different way. And that's the thing. AI is the junior. And if you want to have a really good text, if you want to have the impact on the customer, you need to have someone who knows how to use it and how to say it. That's the
this
thing.
is actually interesting because in some areas of work, including translation, but I see in my own area of work, which is content, I see many copywriters using AI translation and AI tools just to rephrase what they are trying to say. So that is actually a strength for a senior human translator or copywriter, right?
The thing is that why they are using that is that they are trying to get over the bridge like faster. It would take a long time to come up with this idea, but they are something like generating more options, and sometimes they need to aim at that, sometimes they do not need to do that, but they are those who decide which is the best way to go. So again, more like a supervisor. You need to have a really good engineer. It can be anyone who's working in linguist industry to set up the proper tools that you want and you need to use for your source and target text. And when it comes when you have the generated text, then you need to have a qualified linguist, and not only linguist in terms of the language, but qualified linguist in the specific area, like in the industry. So technical, medical, legal, or sales, like marketing and these things. And linguist, hand in hand with the specialization, is the strongest thing that you can have to get the best result.
Yeah. If we would leave the translation itself for a while, do you see any opportunities for language service provider with AI to help you basically simplify some workflows or any other areas where we could help apart from translations?
A lot, a lot. For example, also when it comes to hiring processes, we have, especially in Dialect, like I don't say that every LSP is working like that, but in Dialect we really pay attention also during the hiring process. Like we first of all need to meet with the people. We really know our team. Even though that they are on the other side of the planet, we meet online, we know each other, and we build like a family, because it's based also on the close relationships that we support each other. And if there is anything, please let us know, because we are here to support you. You are not like just the vendor. And this is for us, very important, because sometimes what we see is that linguists are shy to say because they are scared of losing a job.
Right.
So we first of all need to build the trust. And when there is a trust within each other, they will tell us the problems, the barriers that they are facing. And we are then capable to help them and to solve the problem. So basically, what I mentioned during the hiring process is we've got some kind of sample translations. And we've got the prompt, well, more prompts in this case, which are helping us to analyze the quality of the sample translation. And sometimes we also compare the output of more linguists together, and we are asking like the AI, okay, can you tell us why this one, why not this one, and what is your point of view? And following that, our senior linguist, which is deciding this one yes, this one no, is already having some kind of supporting materials provided by AI. So, for example, this is a case, but there are a lot of them, and I cannot say that we have AI implemented everywhere. There are a lot of things which I'm a bit, let's say, not sure if it will happen and if it will be same like in now and in the future, especially when it comes to costs for the AI, because what I saw is that Microsoft and the other big companies like Big Five
OpenAI.
are investing in their own cores, and they are building their own facilities just to generate the electricity. And what I heard is that AI is now very cheap, and we are more or less just paying less, like 10% of actual cost. So sometimes we need to think, okay, now it's nice because the world that is providing AI is trying to teach us to use it and to implement it into our common life. But maybe like in 3, 4, 5 years, they will totally change the pricing, and the cost will be much more higher than for a linguist. So we will see what the future will bring us. But I'm a bit, let's say, I'm open to that. We implement a lot of new processes that are also involving AI, but still we need to think that AI or any machine is just a machine, and it should be a tool, not a manager that would manage us. And that's the important thing. And this is also important thing that I'm talking about to everyone. Like, think about who's the manager here. Is it the tool or you?
Yeah, you mentioned some of the big companies, and it's true that they yet haven't found a profitable business model, none of them regarding AI. And at the same time, they're running like a big marketing machine to get everyone hyped up. We see some sort of mindset shift at our customers that they have sort of different expectations. Is that something you would confirm, that customers have different expectations regarding translations, price, or delivery time, things like that?
Depends on the perspective. What do you mean? But what we really face to is, and that's the thing what I mentioned like a few minutes back in terms of education. It's not just the education of the linguist. Sometimes it's just also about the education of the customer. Because they expect from AI that it will be game changer in everything. Like now we have perpetual mobile, like one-stop solution. I have AI, I pay $20 for GPT and that's all, and I'm happy, and I don't need any employee, and the AI will do everything and generate me my passive income. But it's not like that. They need to realize that, okay, it's a really nice tool, but it's just a tool and it will do what you say. No, and you cannot be sure whether it will be, let's say, good quality or poor quality. You still need to be the supervisor. You are the one who is initiating the process, and you are the one that is closing the process. And where I see the big problems is people are expecting that I have something and it will easily be done. When we are talking about the translation or localization, I will be, for example, giving you exact sample. We've got a customer. They've got a long and thick brochure of a manual in PDF. Okay, here is the PDF. Please, I need it to have it done from Czech to English, British English, let's say, to German and to Polish. Okay, why not? But it's PDF and it's not readable PDF. So you, first of all, they need to know what's OCR. They need to know what's a DTP, and they need to prepare the source text for the AI. But they don't know nothing about it. They just got the PDF, which looks like a picture, and they expect that the AI will sort it out and that the AI will complete the work for them. Yeah. But the localization is a big process, and you need to pay attention to every single detail, starting with the source, what you have, and with what you are starting, and following the, let's say, graphic designer, translators, or linguists that are helping you to, let's say, complete the work. And also the thing that we already mentioned, localization. So what's the culture? What are the habits? What is a typical and what is not for the country that you are planning to expand? Is it normal to put there a picture? Is it, or it's not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are a lot of things we need to think. Mm-hmm. But the customers thinks that it's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the similar feeling that the expectations are pretty high these days, especially due to the, let's say, I already mentioned it, like the marketing machine is coming from all the sides, and people have high expectations. But back to the reality, things are not that simple every time, and it's actually like people expect that AI will do everything for you, but it's not. It's not the case yet.
Yeah, especially relating technical specifications. We see it all the time at Localazy. Is like people don't understand that they have to go through certain processes because we can actually provide them with the service and help them. And that's why we focus so much on integrations and other connectors, because as you said, some people think you can just take whatever PDF or Excel they have and that's done. And that's just the first step. And well, having your developers involved is always very nice for that.
Yeah.
I was wondering when I was hearing you, Jiri, talking about what your clients expect and everything, did you have this experience of losing a client because they thought they would be better off using AI and then coming back, for example, or something similar?
Not only that, even more. The thing is that customers, because we are in a good role actually, like a Dialect, how we build that. We are not only LSP in terms of with a direct clients, but we are also subcontractor, supplier of the bigger parties, bigger companies. And sometimes it's not just the bigger, but there we are having a collaboration with the marketing agencies, which are working in terms of, let's say, the technical thing. Like you need to have 50 characters, you've got a PPC and these things, SEO and the other features in terms of marketing. And we are something like the, let's say, subcontractor and delivering the localization part. And clients are expecting, let's say, make it cheaper, make it faster. Well, actually, they are right. If we are not developing ourselves, it would not be correct to make it cheaper and make it faster. It is. The thing, the difference is we are talking about price per unit, not price the project. 1.5 years back, I was attending a conference in Brussels, and I was sleeping in one hotel, and in the evening I had a very interesting discussion with a local guy when I was sitting at the bar where I should sit, right? And he was very interested, like in our industry, and we had a really nice talk. And he was already in his, let's say, 60s. And he said, like, okay, it reminds me the old time because he was studying history. It reminds me the old time, the era when washing machines were developed. Before that, people were washing their clothes on their own by hands. What was the result was that they were washing their clothes once per week, maybe twice per month. So there was not such a high demand for washing. But when washing machines came, it was a game changer. You had your clothes washed like once per day or once per 2 days. So the demand for the service was much higher. So it doesn't mean for us that we are losing the work. There is just a different strategy. Like, okay, we've got lower rates per unit. We can manage much more words or text within the same time, but customers are providing us with much more work. So let's say project price remains same, but we deliver much more.
Right. So there's like a faster demand cycle in the
Yeah, same time allocation, same income, just much work done within the time that has been allocated. But sure that it goes hand in hand like a puzzle, that if you want to do that, you need to have the right people specialized in the specific industry. Because if you do not have these people, well, you will probably have the text that you ask for, but I'm not sure about the quality.
Specifically, I was wondering, Jiri, we were talking about the expectations of the clients. If we are specific regarding those, do they even know what they want when they approach you? For example, do they want AI to translate all the source text first and then give that first draft to you, for example? Or do they just want to skip everything and just think that they can go into the draft and it can be done in just one round of edits?
Hard to answer this question because we have, let's say, all kinds of customers. So one say, I want this thing having done and I trust you. Like we have a customer that is with us from our beginnings, and the trust and the relation is so strong that they are sending us the text and they say, please do that. They are not asking for the quotation. They are not asking for the for how much it will cost, and please do that. This is the time, we know, we have the strict terms that we confirm together, so they know how much time it will take, but they are not waiting for the pricing, like here it is and do your best. We know that you will not do something that we don't want to be done. So basically this kind of customers we have. But sure, we also have the customers like, please, okay, and make it cheaper as much as you can and make it faster as much as you can. And probably the best thing would be, please complete localization translation of whole my entire website, and better if it would be for free. Because you want to have a customer like me, so it should be nice. And because there is the AI, it will take, for example, 1 hour maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a lot of customers. There are a lot, but I totally agree with you that it's about clear mind and education. Like, we need to know what it is, what it can do for us, but also what I mentioned today regarding the AI, is it a manager or is it a tool? Are you managed or are you managing? And this is what I'm talking about to everyone, like to our team here, when they are using AI for their managerial work. This is what I'm talking also about when I'm talking with translators. And this is also many times, let's say, the core discussion with the customers. Like, we've got the AI, we've got the machine translation as well, like a neuro machine translation. But do you trust it? Like, because you're gonna have some output, and now you know what's the quality, what does it say? No, they do not. So I say, okay, so who is managing who? The text you or you the text?
And as you mentioned, this can change a lot between the languages, right? Because there are some that they have great resources already in AI systems, but low resource languages are still very much difficult to manage in machine translation.
We can see it, for example, and I will maybe mention the one brand. It's a DeepL. DeepL's got very good quality. But if you have a look on their website, and when it comes also to conditions and terms and the descriptions, they are not providing their service for every single language. It's data. You need to have a lot of data to provide the quality. And for a lot of languages, we do not have the data.
Yeah, recently I've seen some projects launching off that are focusing especially on European languages. This funded by the European Union, and don't know if you have seen it, but there's a team, specialized team that is building LLMs for translating European languages, especially those who are, as you say, low resource. And it will be interesting to see the results, because they claim that they really improve the machine translations for these European languages that are not that resourceful.
But this happens even with big languages like Arabic. I was talking to a translator, and she told me that there are some models developing for certain industries, like, for example, the medical industry or some technical industries. But as a whole, Arabic is a highly literary language, and it's kind of difficult to understand the context and the type of Arabic you're going to use depending on the project. So even if you have a large language model, it's like kind of a difficult language to create a model for.
Yeah, like one of the biggest misconceptions I see almost every day is that people believe that, or they come to you with the request, we just need to review these translations, or we just need to review these AI translations or machine translation, whatever it is. And they assume that reviewing after automated translations is much simpler and it will take just a couple hours, usually. But in reality, we see that it's actually, sometimes it makes things even more difficult if it's not at the appropriate quality level. What is your experience with that?
Yes and no. Well, basically, when it comes to this case, I think that it's not only that it has been pre-translated, but sometimes customers are lying us like that. They say it's been done by a translator. Please, can you just proofread the text? And sometimes you see like, you say translator.
It's not.
If it is a translator, probably not a native, and probably not a, let's say, linguist. Maybe some technical writer who saw the target language once or twice. Uh, but on the other hand, there are also types of the text when the machine translation is really good, and it could be almost analyzed like, okay, let's do just the proofreading. So it depends. It varies. On the other hand, as we all of us that are here know, there are a lot of features that normal client or normal customer, they don't know about the aspects that we are facing and working with. But actually, it's fine because it's not their duty to know that. They are doing their best in their industry, not in the localization. So what I mean, for example, is having a term base, having a glossary, working with the localized of the pictures and photos, because if you are working when, for example, Marta mentioned Arabic languages, if you are a company from Czech Republic, for example, and you want to expand to Egypt or, for example, other country, you probably will need also to change some pictures, like to have more proper people there, not having them, for example, now when you open some brochure, you might see people from the Czech Republic being in a car under the snow. Okay, show me like in Egypt you're gonna have a snow. You can try, but you know what I'm talking about. So basically, AI, MT, very good. Yes, agree, and I'm glad that we have it here because the work is much more specialized, much more. And we are finally becoming something like a specific industry. In an old era, when I was a translator, what I faced was the person here working for us is a teacher. They are providing us with a language course and they are speaking English, so they can translate as well. The translation was done by also not the specialist. They were just linguists. Now, with the AI time, I think the time of the person that is fluent in the target language came to the end. You really need to have a specialist in a specific industry.
I was just gonna ask you about that, Jiri, because in this landscape, like you have no choice but to adapt. So, do you think specialization is the way to go? Some people have talked about how transcreation, creative localization can be the way. What do you think is the future in that sense for the translators?
I hope that I have a few more minutes because this is a big question, I would say. But I have also for that very short answer. The client will tell us.
Yeah.
Listen to your customers. For us, what it means, well, we can provide a lot of things that we are not advertising on our website. For example, you can use AI, you can do the post-editing part, you can do all the things that we discussed today. And for example, what we are doing, because our strength is in people. We have the specialists, we have native speakers living in their home countries. I don't need them to be in the Czech Republic. Actually, I don't want, because I need from our linguists to be in touch on a daily basis with the local culture of the language which we need. And what we are, for example, providing for some customers is testing of the result. So before they are going, let's say, like before they release the website, the application, we are doing some kind of beta testing with our linguists, actually. And this is what AI cannot provide you with, actually. The human. That's the thing.
Yeah, most of the times it's also about some sort of emotion, the perception of the message, etc. I can see it from my own perspective because right now I'm living in Poland for a couple of years, and Polish people, they have such a strong pop culture thing, and it's going on like every day there is something new and super popular. And for example, marketing teams from various popular companies here, they leverage these facts for their marketing messages. And it's super interesting. Sometimes I'm not a social media person, so I'm sometimes like I'm completely off the track. But it's something that it's highly dynamic and it's also like reflected in the translations to Polish language. And yeah, it's not easy thing to do if you're not living here.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that. We were talking about Arabic and how, for example, the graphics should be different, but it's just, for example, when you take the website or the app you're going to translate for, like the UI has to be responsive to what you're used to in that country. The payment methods, there are so many factors that are not only concerned to the words you're translating. So I see that there's a bright future for translators and UX specialists there, especially.
When you are mentioning that, it just like with what I would compare it, like for the person that is not, let's say, seeing the point, like in terms of different culture, is imagine that you are Android user and I'm gonna give you some iOS device. Yeah,
to get.
use a Mac or Windows notebook or laptop. So you don't know how to close the window actually, because I don't know where to find that.
Yeah,
You don't know how
it's
to open it. That's the thing.
it's
So yes,
it's a beautiful parallel, actually.
Good analogy, yeah.
Yeah.
where should I close the window, or where should I find the editing button? I don't know. That's not where I usually have it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So guys, I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, what are your final thoughts on this debate? Especially, I was wondering because many translators are very pressed against AI, which I can understand from some point of view, for example, the price of post-editing and the conditions of the translators. But how do you see, especially Jiří, I want to hear from you, how do you and your team see the future regarding that, their livelihood? Do you think is it really something that is going to be menaced, or is there something that we can do as linguists to just leverage our strengths, you know? What is your take on that?
I'm thinking like to provide you with the best answer that I can. For me, there are a lot of things that we need to realize because we are also open to youngsters, like the juniors. I'm really sad about the system in terms of universities. For example, teachers or professors are mostly talking, please find a new job because translators or linguists will not be needed anymore. And people that are studying language 4 or 5 years are, after their graduation, are leaving the school like, okay, what I should do, because 5 years they were talking to me that I will not find a job in my favorite industry. So we need to start with the changing our minds. AI, machine translation, neuro machine translation is here, and it will not disappear anymore. And I think that after that we don't need to care about language industry at all. I think that we will need to care about other things as well. So we need to start to think what it means for us. Be on watch and be careful, because not accept everything on a first glance is very important as well. Test it, play with the tools, sometimes just a play, and then you will come up with the idea how to use it in a professional field. And I see also now the time that is some kind of risky, maybe a bit of risk. And it means, first of all, you skip that. You skip the innovations, and then you will work only with what you had and hope that it will work. Or you decide to grasp the risk as the opportunity. You think, you work hard, you developed yourself, you developed your surroundings, you invest in yourself, and you are providing value, really value to your customer. Because if, and that's the thing that I'm saying all the time to everyone, AI and machine translation will never take over the linguist. If anyone should take over the linguist, it will be a human using these tools. What it means for us, we need to be better than this human. We are the specialist. Linguist industry is getting better and better, and we really need to start promoting our services as very specialized and for not everyone, but for those that are seeing the value of it.
Yeah, that is really interesting, and thank you for that. I think it's a great wrap up. From my perspective, I would just wrap up with the same thing we started with it, and that is AI is here to be a partner to actually create a human with some sort of superpowers, but actually what it means for us is to automate these mundane and boring tasks, and so we can do the things, we can specialize in things we enjoy doing, and basically be human.
That's the thing that the AI cannot give us, human.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Great conversation.
Well, I think that's a great wrap up, guys. Thank you for the insights. We will surely continue talking about this because this is one of the hot topics of the following years, and it will evolve a lot, I think. But thank you, Jiří, for being with us and joining us today in this first episode. We are very happy to have you here, and we hope you see you soon. And to our audience, we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and see you soon on the next episode of Bridging the Gap. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
If you like this episode, please follow our channel and add it to your favorites so you don't miss the next conversation. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube for updates and bonus content. Until next time, stay curious.